Do you want to send flaming arrows upon your enemies, melting the competition away? Then I got the perfect squad set up for you. The concept of this build is to utilize the Trapper's Warbow found here in Elfheim to do some devastating damage in addition to burn, guaranteed hits, and setting up your entire team for hyper offensive damage. The way this build works is the fact that you only need 4 squads to devastate the enemy, but once you do get a 5th squad, it becomes even better. This is something you can do pretty much as soon as you hit level 20 in Elfheim and you do unlock the bow. Let's go ahead and break it down. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed the intro. From you can see, this build is pretty devastating. All my characters in these fights were level 26 or below, and I was able to kill level 40s plus with no issue. I am playing on true Zenoiran mode, and it has been such a blast to make this build, so I certainly hope you guys enjoy. Now, the concept of the build is, like I mentioned in the intro, to use that bow to do arrow rain for devastating damage. So let's go ahead and break everything down for your 4-player squad, because this is what most people will utilize once you get to Elfheim. And of course, when you do unlock your 5th squad, it's going to be preference on what you want to use, but I will break down my ideas. Starting out, let's take a look at our units that are a must-have, and in my opinion, it's going to be Gilbert and Scarlett, the must-to picks. Starting out with Gilbert, the reason we use Gilbert is going to be for 3 things. He gives you rapid order in order to give initiative to all allies, so that plus 20 initiative is pretty crazy. Take a look at my initiative on my archer here. That is insane. I have almost 70 initiative at level 25 because of Gilbert. He provides offensive order, giving you plus 20% attack, defensive order, if the battle even lasts that long, and most of all, because of the white cat ear hood, he is like pure kind of like utility. He is what allows you to use arrow rain pretty much instantly. And this will also give my archer plus 1 attack point back as well. So Gilbert must have absolutely a fantastic support. The gear I use on him is the Wingcrest blade in order to get the plus 1 PP. If you don't want to utilize this, you can utilize something else like the Dragon Bone Blade, but this does give you -10 initiative, so you do want to make sure your initiative on this character is going to be higher than your archer. That way you can give your archer the extra damage from offensive order before he attacks. Taking a look at Rolf here, our good old archer buddy. So Trapper's Warbow, it gives you the arrow rain. This is a 60 physical potency, but because it hits 3 times, you're looking at 180. The hit rate is only 80%, but because of the ability Eagle Eye, it becomes a true strike, making it a 100% chance to hit. I am using the Hero's Medallion in order to gain physical attack, as well as extra attack points and passive points. If you don't want to clear out the Colosseum early on to get this, then simply replace this with something else, but I do like the extra attack that this provides. Angel Plume that you can buy from the angels in order to exchange for divine shards is very powerful because this will give initiative plus 20, which is great because you want this character to go pretty much as soon as possible in combat, right? But it also gives Tailwind, so after he attacks with arrow rain, he will give my allies plus 10 initiative, which is very, very effective. And if you do happen to utilize any flying units in your front row, they get even more. What's great though, because my arrow rain is instant and I get the extra attack point from the cat ears that he has, I can then have an extra attack for row shot or dual shot as needed. I have my pursuit to attack the lowest HP enemy, and of course Eagle Eye we already talked about. Aerial snipe is one thing that rarely happens, but if you do fight enemies that last a long time, this is nice just to have some type of retaliation damage. And the last most important item here is the Clear Sight Amulet. The only reason we utilize this is for the blindness immunity. We don't care about blind cure. Blindness immunity is what makes this great. That way, no matter what I do, I will never miss. And I will showcase on screen now why this is important. And right there is why I wanted darkness immunity, in order to make sure my arrow rain will always go off against the enemies. Alright, let's break down Scarlett. Scarlett has a very unique class, the High Priestess. She is a hybrid of magic and support, meaning she can use magical items like the Flame Brand Tome. This is what makes the build so great. Not only will this give me plus 50 potency for my archer's attack, but it will allow him to burn all enemies he hits, making this a great way to do some fantastic damage, but also put a debuff or affliction, I should say, on the enemy that will do damage over time. And the more stacks of burning you have, the more ticks it does. When it comes to your weapons and everything else, utilize whatever you want. The only real reason I like using the Defender's Mace is because it does give me +1 passive point here. I have the Lapis Pendant to get me to 4, that way I can use Flame Unfurl with no issues and still have 2 passive points to give my allies any type of defense that they need. Her based ability, Saint's Barrier, is very powerful and something very useful. But one thing I do want to note on why we use Scarlett here is because of Passive Miracle. This activates whenever you receive an ally's passive skill, giving them +1 passive point. Now, because the ability for the White Cat Ear Hood takes 4 passive points, this is required. I use my passive point at the start of combat for rapid order to give all allies 20 initiative, so I'm down to 3. Because of Scarlett, I get back up to 4, allowing my White Ear Cat Hood to now affect my archer. The Angel Plume and the White Cat Ear Hood can be bought from any vendor that has the wings, basically the angels. The last unit that I think really makes this is going to be your Doom Knight. I am using the King's Axe because this is one of the best weapons in the game, especially early on, and you can get this real easy in Dragonhold by solving the carving quest chain. Super easy to do. I will have a description and everything else on screen now in case you do need to figure out where all those locations are. When it comes to your shield, I like the Azure Crest shield, mainly because it gives me 1 passive point, which is nice to have. The Corsair's Reins aren't necessarily needed, but this does give you +3 initiative, and it gives you dynamic glide, which is nice because you can just completely evade a single hit, and you gain +20 physical attack, which just makes you hit even harder, and this does stack with the extra attack that Gilbert gives. The Corsair's Reins can be found here from the vendor on the map in Elfheim. And the final item I had is the Carnelian Pendant. You don't necessarily need to use this. You could put this on if you have like the Ruby Pendant for max attack points. That's going to be up to you. Now, taking a look at the 5th members here, there's going to be a few different members you can choose from that I did showcase in the beginning of the video. So member number 1, which is my personal favorite, is going to be Berengaria. Now, the reason I like Berengaria, of course we would want to switch out her weapon for a better axe here, is the fact that she does some devastating damage while also applying CC and follow-up damage as well. So because we are burning all enemies we attack, when you death spin, you will do additional 75 potency against those burning targets, making death spin very powerful, and this will stun my enemies as well. So whenever she is attacked, this can happen, giving you extra attack, which is very powerful. And of course, the go-to Sanguine Pursuit. She will follow up attacks, heal herself, and because I am using the Earrings of Pursuit that you do gain if you happen to let that rogue Gamel survive, as well as the sniper from Act 1 in Corneria, you can gain this when you do their quest chain in Elfheim. Now, you don't necessarily need her though, because you do have other options. But before we switch to that, I do want to point out, Eye of the Warrior Princess and Rapid Order do not stack. All like passive abilities that say start at combat, you can only use one. So you want to make sure you turn off the one you don't want to utilize. Now, if you don't want to use Berengaria, another great addition is going to be a Viking. I know what you're thinking, Viking? Why Vikings? Well, Vikings are pretty powerful in this game if you set them up correctly. So specifically for this Viking Albin, and of course I would be using the Carnelian axe that I got from the Colosseum because it's just so powerful. I have the Nameless Guard Shield, Radiant Cover. This also gives him blindness immunity. The reason I like this is the fact that I can cover someone like any type of ally so they don't take damage. I like using the back row for this because for the most part, the front row is going to survive regardless. The back row is where things get tricky. You want to make sure that your healer or your sniper aren't going to die. So that is why I prioritize the back row. And for those who wanted the Nameless Guard Shield that I mentioned when it came to the Viking, you can get that right above the town here. You will see a tower and you can interact with this tower with Lex and it will give you the shield. I am using this Sapphire Pendant here in order to get to 4 passive points. You can get this from the Colosseum, and I will show you an easy way how you can buy this from the black market vendor shortly. And lastly, just for the extra damage, I go with the Warrior's Medallion. And one thing that's great is the fact that you have Wide Breaker. This will do plus 50 potency against debuff targets and make those targets have negative 30% defense, making your physical attacks even stronger. And I know what you're thinking, well, would this actually proc then if they're only afflicted? Well, I have this set as debuffed only, so that he will only use this if the targets are considered debuffed. And this does proc with affliction, which is nice. So when you do that extra fire on the burning on the enemies, this will proc. Now, of course, if you do have Warhorn here, I do want to talk about, this seems really powerful, but this is actually not as good as it looks. This makes all allies' attack skills unguardable. That is for base guard, so like your base chance to guard. This does not count towards any skills that will automatically guard, so keep that in mind, which is why I think the extra initiative that Gilbert gives is better. When it comes to acquiring the Ruby or Sapphire Pendant, you can get this from the black market vendor in Albion. He sells them, and an easy way to get up there is if you go all the way down here in Elfheim, make sure you do unlock the harbor. This will put you up here on the map. And because most of these enemies are flying units, you will one-shot most fights, and you can go all the way around the come up and get to the vendor. Now, of course, if you don't want to utilize him, another great option is going to be a Griffin Knight. Griffin Knights are very, very powerful. They have amazing abilities and they can do some very strong things. So looking at her gear, I would switch out the Vitality Talisman here, probably for the Sapphire Pendant in order to gain maximum passive points. And this is really powerful here because I now have max everything. This really helps out for any type of cav teams, especially ones that are going to be immune to any debuffs. She will wipe them out. She is just an all-around fantastic character, good damage, and everything else in between. Now, of course, if you don't want your Griffin Knight, another really fantastic option, especially if you want even more burn or stuns, is going to be our friendly Wyvern Knight. And for me, that is going to be Hilda. And Hilda here has some really cool items. So I am using the Silver Trident here because this does give me the option to stun a row of enemies. This does split damage as well, making her do some really powerful damage. The only downside to this is the fact that she doesn't really have much magic potency, so you may want to switch her out for one of the elves instead. That's realistically going to be up to you. But with Wyvern Reigns, you can make it a guaranteed hit and plus 20 physical attack if you're at max HP. So assuming you don't get hit from any like arrows, magic assist, or anything like that at the start of combat, this will proc, making you do even more damage. And of course, she does have the ability Fire Breath, which can be ranged to attack the back row if you wanted to, whatever you want to do, even more burning. So she is just another great addition. So your fifth person realistically is going to be up to you because the fourth squad here, these 4 members, is the bread and butter of the build. But anyway, guys, that is the breakdown. Hopefully everything was explained well. If you have any questions, comment down below and I will try to answer them. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. If you enjoyed, subscribe and hit that like button. I will see you guys in the next one. To all my members, I appreciate you guys. If you want to get early access to build videos like this, some additional perks for my live stream, and shoutouts in my videos, then hit join down below. I'm Ronan, and I will see you next time.